Either you trust us or you don't trust us. If you trust us, be patient. At times, it may appear we're not being fair to you. But you show me cases where we have not been fair to people for, let's say, 5 years, 7 years. Show me cases. Look around the organization. See people. See how they have done. And see if we have been unfair to people over a medium to long-term period. Sometimes, in the short term, life is never going to be 100% fair. We may not be able to identify everybody. We may not be able to be fair to everyone in the short term. And that's why I say, before 5 years, we consider you a new joinee. Before 5 years are over. So, be patient.
It's 2023. The business of online comparison platforms seems old-fashioned. Sure, people may land upon them via search engines, but few would rarely transact through them. And if the underlying products being compared are as high value and life-altering as insurance, then doubly so. Right? Wrong. Policybazaar, not just India's but the world's largest insurance comparison and transaction platform, proves that. I'm Rohin Dharmakumar, your host, and welcome back to another episode of First Principles. Policybazaar started out in 2008 and is today publicly listed. It's the largest in its space by far. Many of the things it does or how it does don't fit into easy patterns that we've been used to. For instance, the fact that employees making phone calls to prospective customers is at the core of their business. In an era where we are told phone calls and call centers are a relic of the past. I brought this up many times in my conversation today with Yashish Dahiya, the co-founder and Group CEO of Policybazaar. He attributes many such decisions to Policybazaar being fundamentally first principles driven. Yashish is incredibly energetic and driven. He's a serious sportsman and triathlete. He's also as straight-talking and candid as they come. We cover a lot of ground in our conversation. Why he calls Policybazaar an education platform and not a comparison one. How Policybazaar stumbled on the call center model and how it became one of its strongest differentiators. Why founders and companies need to think really hard about their right to win. Why anyone who spent less than 5 years at Policybazaar is still considered fresh. How he spots and grooms talent, and the importance of physical endurance and excellence. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. And if you've got a few minutes, please take the listener survey at theken.typeform.com/FP survey to help shape the future of this podcast directly. The exact link is mentioned in the show notes too, in case you would prefer to just click. Hi, Ashish. I want to start with this apocryphal story I've heard of you from various people much before I met you for the first time, which is the story of when you were studying at IIT Delhi and you were staying in Noida. And if you couldn't find transportation back home, there have been times when you decided to just run from IIT Delhi to Noida, which is probably what, like 25, 30 kilometers?
It was about 22 kilometers, but yeah, it's very true. It was not it was actually more often than your words suggest. And it was a very practical thing, yeah. It was just, there used to be a bus. So I had to come out of my house, walk to the bus stand, then take the bus to Central Secretariat, which is the middle of Delhi, and then change bus there, and then take the next bus, which would come to IIT Delhi Gate. And then from IIT Delhi Gate, I would have to walk to my hostel, which was a walk of about 2 kilometers from IIT Delhi Gate to my hostel. And this whole process would take me about 2 hours, right? Now, if you would appreciate, I was a runner, and a 22-kilometer run used to be about 1 hour 30, 1 hour 40 minutes. I was a good runner. So it was actually quicker. Plus, in a day, I had to do a run, or in a week, I had to do a certain number of runs, just generally because I used to always do that. So it was one item ticked off the list. And I've been a practical person in terms of, how do I manage my luggage and all. Like even today, for example, I never take my swimming trunks or my swimming kit out of my car. And
Because you never know when you may need to swim.
no, because
Is that-
why would I bother picking it up when I have to go for a swim? And I just dry it in the car. Now, I know for some people that could be disgusting. For me, it's just a practical thing. So I find it weird when, the whole family is rushing about trying to get their stuff together. And I'm like, what are we even waiting for? So even when I'm traveling, like you may know that like I live in the UK and I live here. I don't carry clothes across the two places. I just go with my handbag because I have a set of clothes there and I have a set of clothes here, and I need very few. But I just think, as I think through life, I'm usually a practical decision maker. It's not made out of any bravado that I'm a great runner and anything of that sort. It is just a practical decision. And then I also had a Atlas Pro 10 that time, which is a cycle. It used to take me 35 minutes or so to come on the cycle. So every weekend, it would either be a run or a cycle. I would never go by the bus. And I didn't have any other mode of transport. Now, but it was impractical to go by the bus. You're going through Delhi heat, drenched along with, packed like sardines in a bus. Why would you do that? Right? And it was a beautiful run or cycle along Jamia Millia, Surajkund. It was a beautiful place here, which otherwise I would never see, right? If I went by the bus. So it was a very practical thing. It wasn't anything done out of because I thought I was unique or anything of that sort.
Thank you for clearing that. From that, I want to jump to Policybazaar directly. I'd met Sanjeev Bikhchandani a couple of days ago, and he told me that the first time when you had approached him for an investment, your pitch was, Sanjeev, you're probably paying 60% more for your car premium. And Sanjeev was like, it's impossible. How do you know that? And then you just proceeded to essentially prove to him how it was ended up showing him 40% off or 50% off. Back then, what did you think the opportunity was for Policybazaar? And how has that scaled to the opportunity that you see today for Policybazaar?
So when I met Sanjeev, I did not understand health insurance and life insurance at all. Today, Policybazaar, 90% of our value lies in health insurance and life insurance, not in motor insurance. So at that time, I was coming from...
By value, you mean the premiums that you collect? Or
I mean
the opportunity that you see?
the opportunity from premium perspective. Also, 75% of our premiums, actually a little more than that, are from health and life. And I did not even know the health and life business at that stage. I did not even know that how health insurance policies are, how they are constructed. I had no clue. So I was coming from a very simple thought process that in motor insurance, comparison is important. And I was coming from a European context where, comparison was a big part of the market. However, my thinking transformed quite a bit in the 1 year after I met Sanjeev. And actually, that is when Policybazaar... See, today Policybazaar is a unique platform across the world. But the germination of all of that actually happened in that 1 year, not before that. And Sanjeev agreed to invest on just the motor story. And today also, whenever we discuss, Sanjeev almost always speaks about the motor story. What I understood as time progressed is that motor was a very small part of... So in the UK, for example, which is a much smaller country, there are about 32 million cars, right? In India at that time, there were about 10 million cars. Today, there may be 15, 20 million. But I'm saying much smaller than a country which is a population of only 60 million people. And the second part was the value of the cars in India is about half to 1/3 of the value of the cars there, because mostly we have Suzuki and Hyundais out there. The standard, car would be not Suzuki and Hyundai. Suzuki and Hyundai, I don't think will be even 10% of the cars there, right? So I think one got to a conclusion that very quickly, because I had another side effect to me, which was that my dad was in the army and I had lived in the UK. So I had seen social security everywhere. And so it was, and I'm a very long term thinking person. So it was very scary for me to live without social security. And that was a big,
So what was this? What happened in this 1 year when you said that
I-
after meeting Sanjeev?
So do appreciate that I was pretty much for the first time living in India. I had not lived much here, so I did not understand. I did not know the social security aspect very well. So two things happened. One is I realized that this country is in dire need of life insurance and health insurance, because if a person expires or a person falls sick, they actually have no financial recourse, right?
And I think that's the falling sick is the single biggest contributor to families falling under the poverty line in India.
Yeah, and death and disability. And I have lots and lots of stories in the sense. I had one of my mother's brothers. So most of us have gone to the army, and so we don't know the concept of not having social security, because till the end of life, one is covered by a pension and a health cover and everything. This gentleman could not join the army because while he had gotten through to the NDA, in that interim phase before he was supposed to join, he was jumping over the holy fire, the holy key fire, and in that his leg got burnt, which disqualified him from joining the army. And so then he joined the civil. And what you realized is over time, not having that social security, not having that safety net, kept bringing poverty to him, one incident after another. And we socially moved very, very apart, despite the fact that his salary was not very different from what he would have received in the army, right? But just other events and not having social security. So I think I do realize the need for social security a little more clearly than other people. And I felt that the market just did not have that. So education on that and selling those products was very important. The second thing that happened is I went through my father's policies. This is the 2008 year. And when I met Sanjeev, the crash had not happened. And by the time Sanjeev had invested, the crash had happened. So InfoEdge's own share price was down by, I think, about 70% in that phase. And I think it's only Sanjeev who invested. Otherwise, people would not have kept to their word. But that's a side story. The real story in this time was my father, who had been getting 7% returns every year through his savings plans, which were market linked at that time, which he did not have any clue of. But he used to get 7% return every year, while the market was growing 70% every year. From 2003 to 2008, the market grew almost 70% every year. Now, in 2008, the market fell to about 40% of its value. And when that happened, my father's investments fell to 25% of their value because they lost. He was also paying costs. And so it was a very enlightening experience for me. And I'm not saying anything good or bad out of this, but the experience was me telling my father that, look, these are market-linked plans, which he did not know about. And then telling him that, look, the person who sold these to you made so much money from you. He could not believe that number because he had invested about 20 lakh rupees. And so I explained to him that the person has made between 5 to 9 lakh rupees from you. He said, that's impossible. So
something
I said,
which was like a protection kind
no,
of.
No, it's not protection at all.
Okay.
He did not even know he was buying insurance. He thought he was buying savings because he used to invest in FDs.
Mm-hmm.
He said, yaar, is pe tax bachta hai. This is like FD. This is a great plan. I'm just telling you the exact story. So we invited the agent over back home. And I made the agent sit down in front of my father because he wouldn't believe me, because he said, this guy he studied abroad. He doesn't have a clue what's going on. He's trying to educate me. I am the guy who really knows the market here and I cannot be fooled. It wasn't about whether it's a good product or a bad product, but it was not according to his understanding. So when I made the person sit down, that person admitted that yes, the minimum he made from my father was about 5 lakh rupees. When he made that statement, I still remember that day. My dad has been a commando dagger in the Indian Army. He has his own capabilities. That guy was having tea at that time. He just said one thing, chai niche rakho aur ghar se bahar jao. And I have not seen him that angry kind of ever. Right? Because he this is the person who's got very hard-earned money, like all of us, who had just given 5 lakhs to somebody for things that he did not understand at all, and he was totally missold. And he said, you should do something about this. You need to educate people. And so our first campaign was Ullu Mat Bano. But when we did that campaign, we got a lot of pushback from the industry that you cannot be negative. And since then, we've never run a negative campaign. We've always said, yeah, let's focus on our health insurance and term insurance and
doing the right
some of the and you know, slowly the industry will automatically move towards positive. Let's not focus on all the mis-selling and all the bad communication that happens in the industry, because that's not something we want to waste our time on. Like, jo ho raha hai, we can't change everything in the industry overnight.
Got it. Policybazaar is a listed company. It's been around for everyone knows it. But still, I'd like you to explain to me in a line or two, what is Policybazaar?
Policybazaar is today, it is different from how it started, is today an educator to the consumer on the need for protection against death, disease, and disability. Okay, so if you have death, disease, and disability, there's a financial impact. Policybazaar educates you on how to make sure that financial impact is taken care of.
It's curious you use the word educator, because you're not a university, right? At the end of the day,
we've spent 2,000 crore rupees running television commercials saying health insurance, life insurance is a must for you. I don't know how else to call myself. That's my biggest expenditure till date. And my biggest loss as well. And that's the brand Policybazaar. That's what it stands for. By the way, in the last 5 years, about 85% of my advertising has been on those two lines alone. That you must buy more health insurance, you must buy more life insurance. If you speak to me anytime, at least 70% of the time I will spend on explaining just this one concept to you. So how do I call myself anything else but that?
And how do you make money?
We make money whenever you purchase the health insurance or life insurance, we get paid a certain amount by the insurance company.
You said earlier in the conversation that we are the largest of our kind globally. And that is true. I don't think there is anyone in any country around the world who operates at the scale that you do.
Yeah, and I'm not saying number one or largest in terms of there is somebody else. I don't even know who else could even be a comparable.
That was my point. And because we live in a world where people are always looking to pattern match. They're looking at, in China, this exists. In the US, this exists. And they're trying to fit an Indian company. So does this act as a barrier when you're trying to explain to someone that we are the largest at what we do from India and there is no one else? Don't people ask you how come this? See,
we're a bit first principles oriented. We haven't done this because there was a large market. We haven't done this because there wasn't. Term insurance did not exist when we started, right? But just first principles oriented, right? So when you're first principles oriented, sometimes you end up doing things which haven't been done before. But let me explain to you in a nutshell the problem of the insurance industry. A customer pays a premium. At that time, a distributor is paid. And at that time, an insurance company receives a premium. So both of these are right now in the positive. Then a customer has a claim. When he has a claim, the customer is in the positive and the insurance company is in the negative. In the beginning, the customer is in the negative. So it's a negative decision for the customer upfront. There's no upfront benefit that the customer receives. There is no upfront cost for the insurance company except for the distribution, really. And creating a product and all that stuff doesn't cost so much. And for the distributor, he also gets paid. So very lopsided interests. The distributor and the insurance company both make money upfront. And the customer loses money. Hopefully, in the future, the customer has the potential of making a lot of money. As they call it, 1:100 times money. So he may have paid 1 rupee and he may make 100 rupees. At that time, the company will lose 100 rupees. So extremely lopsided interests. If you think about it, the best thing for the insurance company is I collect premium from people and I never pay claims. The best thing for the customer is he pays a premium when he's 100% sure he's going to claim. Right? So totally conflicted interests. Now, in this situation, a good long-term intermediary will be one who gets the right Basically, you're selling a promise. And that promise better be right, or the right terms, or the right understanding. So you have to have very good disclosure from the customer. And you have to have very good disclosure from the supplier. The reason I'm trying to explain this is the way profits get made in the insurance industry. And I have met hundreds of decision makers, not just in India, across the world, is they try to make the profit on day one itself, guaranteed. We have this concept of VNB, which is what is the profit you have made on your business? What is the profit potential? So the business may run 30 years, but you've calculated...
Sorry, what's VNB?
It's basically the value of the policy that you have sold. So we have this habit of almost calculating our profitability because of actuaries, because of various things on sort of day one itself, right? And what that lends itself to is selling products where you can almost know you've made money on day one. How does that happen? If you think about the insurance industry, how does that happen? You sell a product where whatever you paid to the distributor is taken from the customer, or a savings product, mostly, right? If the customer cancels this, there will be surrender charges, etc., etc., etc. So you will almost always make money. So there is almost no risk. Now you're getting into the game of risk. Most parts of the industry would not even want to go to the side of risk. Because health insurance and life insurance, there are actually claims that need to be paid. And there the conflict starts coming between... So the industry somewhere, for the smartest people in the industry, I'm talking about big CEOs, people who've run the industry for 20 years, 30 years, they would almost say, let's not waste time. We know how money is made, let's make money. Let this kid shout around and waste his time, and one day he will die because essentially he's trying the impossible.
Who's this kid?
Let's say me, okay? I believe this conflict can't exist forever. You have to solve for this, right? You have to educate the customer.
You mean that this conflict will always... Oh, you're talking about the conflict where they do not want to confront risk.
I'm saying, I'm not talking about any one individual, in general, the industry, right? And time teaches you things that don't work and things that work, right? So it's a very misunderstood industry. And risk creates claims. And you don't want to sell products which have lots of claims. And you don't want to sell products where there's a chance that claims can be very high because you've somehow misunderstood the customer. It's a very hard thing for me to understand, okay, this is Rohin in front of me. There are 100 Rohins. Their chance of claiming is so much. I have to promise him lifelong renewability on health. I don't know what diseases are going to appear, what patterns. It's a complex subject, right? And then basis that, my profitability will be determined. Very complicated subject. So it's not for the faint-hearted. Far more complicated than lending. In lending, we all worry about not giving loans to people who will not repay. But in insurance, that thinking of somehow getting a fraudulent customer is not that deep as an industry. You would have interviewed hundreds of people in the industry. I promise you, every time you talk to somebody about lending, the biggest topic would be collections and credit quality. I don't know if you interact with insurance people, if you get the same concept, that the biggest concept in the insurance industry is actually disclosure and claims. I think you would get things like, let's simplify the product, let's somehow get it sold, let's somehow attach the product, let's get it embedded insurance. You would have heard a lot of these words.
So what you're essentially saying is that the industry largely focuses on growth and selling more rather than the profile of customers.
Sales and profitability
rather than
is the way to make money in insurance, right? Because eventually we're all supposed to make money, so that's great. What someone's trying to do is say, what is right for the consumer? Can we actually educate? It's a very hard thing. Because in this industry, the surprising thing is, at least in the short term, the more you educate the customer, it actually works against you in the short term. Because
why is that?
On the savings products, if you educate the customer too much about surrender charges, etc.,
they will not buy that.
They may not buy. I remember long ago, one day, somebody from one large company came to me and said, we want to hold a savings insurance day where we will put all the plans out there and explain every part of it so that there's a lot of take-up of consumers. I folded my hands in front of them. Don't do this. You'll actually be destroying the industry. So education sometimes can work against sales, at least in the short term, right? Selling term insurance is not easy. telling somebody your family will get paid once you are dead.
And that goes against the very Indian and Asian ethos of not wanting to confront that you may be there. Or why should I pay someone money when I'm not getting anything in return?
Exactly. So these are hard problems to solve. So I sometimes say that in the insurance industry, sometimes the consumer is his own biggest enemy.
And thus, education is
And
your
thus,
biggest
education
spend.
is the biggest bet. You educate a lot, but at the same time, you don't allow customers to miscommunicate to you. You don't allow fraudsters. It's a very tough thing. 2%, 3% fraudsters. We've spent what? About 25 minutes or so talking. Just think of one thing. I might have spent 18 minutes of that talking about risk and education. You interact with people in the insurance industry and tell me when you find that.
Why is that? Like, let me take you up on that, right? Because you're talking
Because
about
you
it.
asked me, why is Policybazaar unique?
No, I get that. I'm
Yeah,
saying that
that's the reason.
does it not stand to reason that for an insurance company, it's even more important to understand?
No, I'll explain. See, it's a low trust category. In this, what you actually want is a high fidelity, high trust product. People very loosely say we should increase confidence. Now, what is increasing confidence? Especially when the customer is also there. Let's say 5% of customers are out there to get the 1:100 benefit. Okay. Now, if 5% of customers, let's say even 1% of customers take the 1:100 benefit, your entire collections are wiped out. Obviously, because if 1% takes 100% and it's 1% of customers, so 1% fraudsters can destroy this industry. Right? I would even go to the saying, even in lending, 1% fraudsters, but we work with 5% NPA. Right? The lending industry is okay to work with 5% NPA. Right? The insurance industry cannot work with 5% fraudsters. Even 1% fraudsters can destroy the industry. So you have to be that precise in catching it. And that's a very hard thing to do for us and for the insurance industry. And my view is, I have seen very few focus on it or be worried about it as much as they need to be.
But that's my question. Why? Why do you think so?
Let me share one more thing with you. Actually, one very large insurance company CEO said it in a very good way. He is a very nice person. He said, by the time the claims on my life insurance policies come, I won't be the CEO.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. It's not my problem.
Yeah. Now, please don't take that wrongly.
Yeah, I get it. But if something is going
to
happen
today, what matters is what sales I get. The claims will probably come at a later stage.
So it's misaligned incentives. Short term.
I wouldn't go there, yeah. I wouldn't go there.
No, but like, how do we really solve it, right? If something
and
the cost is paid 10 years from now.
There's inertia and change. There's there is time lags. And who would stop at making money? Neither would I. Right? So I'm not saying that we are holier than thou. It's just I'm troubled by something which is so obvious that I don't find as many people troubled by. That's all. That's all one is saying.
And what is Policybazaar doing to
so we had a kind of 4-hour day where we ran out of time, where all we did was we talked to we explained what we are doing to control fraud. It's really that simple. Okay, I'll give you an example of what kind of fraud actually happens in the insurance industry. What basic, you'll be surprised. So yesterday somebody told me somebody was trying to buy a policy for someone and they actually had a video. And in the video, there was a person who was dead. And you could tell the person was dead. He was propped up against the car. So that's the basic level of frauds people try. And every time, I'll give you another example. We started selling savings products. People started paying 3,000 rupee premium per month and doing frauds. Now we've managed to control everything up to 5,000 rupees. Somebody started coming and paying 8,000 rupees. So these are organized fraud groups. There is no way to stop them entirely. The whole idea is you have to keep moving one step ahead of the game and make sure your particular channel is harder to break than others.
So to be clear, Yashish,
and we spend a huge amount of time on that, whether it's through technology, whether it's through people, whether it's through verifiable processes, whether it's through multiple checks. So very simple things, right? The person who bought the policy, their voice is consistent Because we usually sell a policy over, or a health or life policy over 6-7 periods. Somebody would get very excited if people started buying instantly. We get very worried. So sudden increase in conversion rates in a particular city is a warning signal for us. So if I suddenly in Bhiwani where I get 50 visitors, I suddenly get 8 sales, it's a big alarm bell for me. You appreciate, right? Because that means something is happening.
Sorry,
people are buying too quickly.
I must interrupt you here to just clarify one thing. Policybazaar is a platform.
Yeah.
And the common understanding of how the platform operates is that people come to Policybazaar and they become leads, which you pass on to insurance companies. So to a lay person, it does not look like, why are you doing this fraud analysis? Because isn't that the job of the insurance company? So it looks like you are doing a lot of
you
the work.
Both, look, anybody who interacts with the consumer is the first line of defense against fraud. If anybody believes that is not the case, and the person who's interacting with the consumer is a dumb, is just basically a dumb terminal, I think it's very, very shallow understanding, right? Because that's obvious, right? Who else will defend? You are interacting with me. You can look me in the eye right now. You can tell whether there is, we all have those pattern matching and various things in our own brains filtered over years. We can tell whether somebody's passionate, whether there's a lot of stuff we can do. We are the first line of defense. When we meet somebody, we can tell what kind of a person they are.
And you do this in order to make sure that the people who are buying through Policybazaar are genuine.
Let me tell you why I selfishly do it. My company's horizon, and me being the largest individual shareholder of this company, is longer than the company, than the person who's buying the policy. He may have a 5-year, 10-year horizon. I probably have a 20-year horizon. So I want Policybazaar to be here 20 years from now also. If I don't differentiate my platform versus other channels on quality, it's bad for me. I'm not even worried about so if I don't make profits for my partners, that cannot be a good thing for me long term. Today I can make money. I tell my partners, making money from you today is one piece of the activity, but that's not the main part. The main part is whether I'm going to be making money from you 20 years from now or not. And that gives me strength, right? Let me if there was one thing I could do, I would set up a reinsurance company. But what does that tell you about me? That I think
about risk.
We have an understanding of risk, which is now deep enough that we want to embed ourselves deeper into that and make calls on our books, which we don't understand the rest of the market as well. Because I believe today lots of channels do not focus as much on this area. And the thinking that the channel is not responsible, see, till late, even from an extent, the regulation, till late, used to say the channel cannot be penalized for claims. Right?
That's my question to you.
My point is, it logically doesn't seem right to me. Logically thinking, how can the person who's interacting with the consumer not be responsible for the quality of the customers?
In the offline world, that would be the equivalent of saying the broker who sold a policy should not be held responsible. We don't say that.
Yeah, but the point is, come on.
I get it. But just to clarify your point about wanting to set up or a reinsurance, reinsurance being essentially the place where insurers go and insure their own risk.
It is the one that finally carries the biggest risks. Right? So if you have a life insurance policy, 70 to 90% of the risk lies with reinsurers. And you need reinsurance capacity to be able to write a lot of business.
And reinsurers are sort of paid premium by the insurers.
By the insurers, yeah. So it's eventually everybody at some level is a distributor, and the reinsurers will have bigger reinsurers behind them. So my point is, because we understand our risk quite well, not the market risk, we believe there's a possibility there that reinsurers should start differentiating prices and features for those products. And I also believe a lot of innovation can happen at the process end, which if a reinsurer had better visibility on, they could price better. And that's a good thing for the market. It is actually a change which will make the market grow. But if you notice, I have not yet focused on simplification of products. speed of products. Because you know what? That in many cases opens up to, see, to sell insurance, you have to be able to marry a couple of things. You have to not missell. And especially as you go to less wealthy people, right? You should be not allowed to missell even more because they don't have the ability to understand. Richer people can understand better, or more financially well-off people can understand hopefully better. So that's one part. So you have to stop mis-selling. You have to make sure the disclosure is very high level, because without disclosure, you'll get hammered. Again, the same thing. The weaker you go into society, the level of disclosure increases. The problem of disclosure increases because the person is more and more desperate. Remember, this guy is giving you 20,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, 200 rupees. He wants it back here. And if he can get 100 times back, he's desperate to get it back. So he's going to try stuff, right? And you got to protect yourself against it because you can't allow him to try stuff, right? And the point is that the lower in the segment you go, and this is a part that's not very well understood by people, but actually the lower you go into the segments, this problem tends to become a more amplified problem. And so people talking about bottom of the pyramid sometimes is smoking. They're not understanding the real issue, right? Let me give you the third thing is cost of delivery. Now remember, I came to that last because that you can only solve for that when you solve the other two, because the cost of distribution in insurance is about, over the lifetime of the policy, on average is about 4-5%. But the cost of claims is 75-80% over the lifetime of the policy, right? So that's the problem you got to solve, not the 4-5%, right? Now, people point out towards various kind of things. Somebody tells me there's a company called Bima that sells 1 rupee policies. I'm not going to comment on any one company, but the point is, all over the world, look at all these policies, all these embedded policies, etc., etc. Just calculate what is the actual claim payout to the customer from all of them combined across the world. I can give you the answer, it'll be about 10%.
Your point being that?
My point being they're neither helpful to the consumer. They're only helpful to the person,
the product creator,
the guy who has the embedded platform. Like if it's an Alibaba or somebody, they would probably make money. The insurer,
what's an ideal number claims ratio for a
according
product?
to me, a good claims ratio in a product is about 70%, because that tells you that, okay, individually I should, the risk is too much for me, so I should have some consolidation of risk between hundreds of people. And yes, they should have something left for themselves, because otherwise, why would they consolidate for me if the claims ratio was 105%, why would I do it?
So 70% means out of every 100
every 100 rupees of premium collected, roughly between 70 to 90% should be paid. The cost of distribution will be between 5 to 20%. And there's an administration cost and there's some revenue you make.
All right. So if I kind of see that from a simplistic...
I feel good if the claims ratio is 70 to 90%.
So that means from a profit margin, I mean, if I were to use that word, it's like 10 to 30 is your profit margin.
It's a little different from that.
I know.
Because there is investment income. In India, you have 8% investment income on a long-term policy. Please understand, on life insurance, about 30-year policy, you're collecting premiums for 30 years and you're paying the claim much later.
I was simplifying it.
Yeah, in a simple manner, my view is 70 to 90% of the value of the money should be derived by the consumer. It can never be 100%, because then why would anybody do business?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Switching gears to Policybazaar, you were one of the earliest proponents of doing distribution via people calling up from a call center. It was, I think, unfashionable in the early days. Then, a lot of people, exactly, right? Like, it stayed that way. And like, I'm sure you would have got multiple calls from people or like investors asking, isn't it more efficient to do it online via apps, etc., etc. So first question is like, how many people do you have in your call center today? And the second, of course, related is like, how has your thinking around?
We have about 5,000 people in the call center, and we have about 1,000 people who are available physically across the country to meet people. And
So has your thinking on having your own call center, such large call centers, ever changed?
No. And I'm very grateful we went down this route. It was not a natural thing for me, because before this, I had never run call centers. We had one partner who was a specialist at running call centers. And for whatever reason, he decided to exit very early. And I do not feel good about the fact that that exit happened so early. But he exited the company after about 5 years of it being set up. But I think a lot of credit to him. This was Avnish Nirjar. A lot of credit to him for having made us think in this manner. At that time, we hadn't thought too deep about why call center, etc., etc. We just did it because he was a specialist in call center, so he set it up naturally.
And today, with the benefit of hindsight, how do you see that?
I'm just grateful that happened. See,
I'm asking this because it's counterintuitive for most people.
I'll explain.
They think it's outdated.
Let us say we make 100 rupees, okay, in revenue. The cost of my call center is about 20 rupees of that revenue. That's the reality. Anybody can, it's a public company. Broadly, maybe 2019, don't hang me for that, but it's in that range. So it's about 1/5 of my revenue. If I did not have my contact center, I'm talking again about health and life. So again, people are very confused. Like me, please understand, till 2008, I did not understand the health and life business. Today, I'm the largest seller of health and term in this country. The largest, by far and away. I don't think there's anybody who's even 1/10 of us, right? So that's a very big thing for something like India. And I'm talking about online, offline, everything, right? And at that time, I did not even know what health insurance or life insurance was. And I think most people are in that mindset, whether they are investors or whether they are market participants. Most people are in that zone that they actually don't understand it. They think it is a bit like motor insurance. In a way, like Sanjeev, that motor insurance comparison, it should do well. That's exactly what Policybazaar was. And many people think of us still as that. That's what Money Supermarket is. So even if you look at our international investors, they many times think of us as that. Right?
Money Supermarket is a UK.
It's a UK-based guy. That's what I would say is the biggest platform for motor insurance in the world. We might be as big or bigger now, but let's leave that aside. So I think the difficulty there is it's a very standard product, very well understood product, and price is pretty much the only differentiator. People don't understand that in health and life, when people say, I want a simple product, that's not what the consumers want. Because the consumer wants what's special for me. That's the reality. And thus the consumers need to understand the different plans. They engage. They take 2 weeks to 6 weeks to purchase. There's a whole cycle there. And for health and life, my revenue would be between 1/4 to 1/3 if I did not have the call center. So now let's come to the mathematics of this, right? For 20% extra cost, I am getting 70% extra revenue.
Why?
Right? So let's get to maths of it first.
All right.
So my return is 3.5x on my investment. So and I'm not even getting to NPV yet. I'm only talking about first year revenue. For having the contact center, my return on investment is 3.5x. It's not a bad investment, number one. The second thing is, because of this, my sales are triple, which gives me a lot of leeway with partners. They find value in us because of that. The last thing, which I did not have a clue about when we started, please now appreciate I have voice analytics data, not just dynamic of today, but static for the last 15 years. Because we've been recording conversations for the last 15 years. Each and every conversation is recorded. And we have claims data for the last 15 years. Do you realize the value of this? Having each word spoken by the consumers and by our people, and it's because technology has evolved now, and having its linkages to claims and understanding that, and thus being able to pick out for the future, it's a crazy amount of information in a business which is totally dependent on information, right? So not having that, you come as a customer. Are you talking about cataract? Are you talking about diabetes? Are you talking about claims? So I'll give you a very simple answer here. We have one particular analysis. I'm talking at a very superficial level now. And this may not even be true because I'm a public company. So let me just say, what I'm saying may not be true, okay? But if a person in motor insurance, which is the most standard product, talks about claims, and one guy does not talk about the claims experience, the actual claims ratios are about 30% apart. Now you realize the power of having that ability to talk. Just talk. Talk to me.
Sorry,
Tell me about
customer speaking about
Yeah,
claims.
yeah.
So what is the
Just-
correlation there? Like, someone who speaks versus someone who doesn't speak.
So, could be wrong information, I'm clarifying so that nobody in the market kind of sues me for this.
Yeah.
But about a 30% delta.
So
Now that is huge, right? It is, okay, so let me put it this way. I get paid 13%. This is 30%. So this is 2.5 times what I get paid.
So in a
I'm
word,
talking about just a single thing.
I got it. So the call center over 15 years has provided you with a wealth of analog information.
It has provided me with 3 times more sales than I would have otherwise got. It has provided me a wealth of data.
And it's analog information, because digital information there is no way for you to, someone check something, someone write something, in an app. It's no different from
I also track that. I also track that. But there is this also. Right? And it is because technology is evolving now that everything is capturable. I'll give you a very simple example. The person who goes for the medicals, is it the same voice as the person who did the call? We are now not just doing calls, boss. We are now physically meeting people. We have video conversations. Roughly 20% of our sales are through video conversations.
Are you running a lot of AI in order
Huge amount here. Huge amount. I would say it is AI with impact and with action. There's no point talking about the AI. The point is it's having impact. And that is why we're talking about reinsurance and insurance and risk and, what we can do on that front. So I think, a lot of things, we're getting to that scale where it's starting to make sense for us. And I think without that communication, so I would say, okay, who else has built, let us say, online sales in health and life without conversations? Nobody. Now, the second largest, I will not even name them, but the second largest player in the market is building it primarily through video conversations. They're almost a party that nobody's heard of, but they are almost all their sales are through video conversations. And very large platforms or very large companies with lots and lots of customers are not able to build it because that engagement is not there. That's the reality. You need it in this market because, it's required. That's it.
I'll quickly switch to the sports aspect. A lot of people say they're into sports. I know you're really into sports. What's the amount of, we talked about the fact that you were a runner. I know you're a triathlete. What is the amount of training that you typically do these days, and in what sports?
So, I think roughly about 12.5, 13 hours in a week on endurance sports, mostly running, cycling, and swimming. But that's not because I have any goals or anything. It's just a habit. Yeah, it's become a habit. And if I don't do it, I don't feel good about myself.
You did have some, I think, a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you start doing something what was it, like swimming or something?
I became the Masters national champion in swimming. I'm quite good in cycling. I'm okay in running. Running was what I started with as a kid. We, as a family, my kids also participate. We win a few triathlon relays and all that stuff. But listen,
you train your kids as well. How old are your kids?
So I'll tell you what I wanted to share with you is what I share with my kids. I said, look, you are first a soul, and the first externality you have is your body. Then you have your clothes, and then you have a house and a car. So let's never go the other way around of starting to put car and house before your body.
That's a fascinating.
Or your clothes before your body. Because those are things you can change more easily. And they're actually external to you. They're never yours. You will start, one day you will leave the body also. But chances are it will stay with you much longer than anything else. So solve that much before you solve for the car and the house. Right? Because chota ghar chalega. So I give my son this all the time. I said, And guys, don't get me wrong. Look, everybody's everybody. But I tell him, okay, if you had somebody getting off a Rolls Royce, but they were this, really unfit, lousy looking person, or you had somebody getting off a Maruti, but they were really Milind Soman, which one would you prefer to be? It's obvious. Milind Soman getting out of a Maruti is, according to me, far, far more preferable than somebody really unhealthy getting off a Rolls Royce. I think we should be clear in our priorities. Once you have that priority sorted, to me, it's the most important thing. Besides improving your soul and your character, improving your body is the most important thing in life.
How old are your kids?
21 and 19.
And you train them, or
No,
you
I
train
don't
with
train.
them?
I'm not allowed to train them, man.
I've
wife,
heard that you're competitive with them, and
I compete with
you.
them. I compete with them, and I keep discovering things about them. So if we are racing,
They are triathletes.
no,
too?
so they are triathletes as well. So let's say in swimming, my daughter is faster than me, but whenever we have a race, she will actually beat me. Okay, she will compete and beat and win. What I noticed about my son was he won't beat me. He'll just stay. But if he gets a much more competitive swimmer than me, then he'll compete and beat. So he's got that little, he's considered the guy who's not, but he's got that deep respect somewhere where I once asked him that, why didn't you overtake me? Because we were doing a 10K and I knew he could and he did not. And he used a wrong word. I don't know whether he said, I'm not an asshole. So basically, he says, I'm not going to do that. So it's just,
I have nothing to prove by
by beating you. Yeah. So, and he said, I want to make you feel good or whatever. I'm just running along with you. So I'm grateful, for both the kids, and I'm grateful that they at least do some amount of fitness. So,
Do you see a difference in the way Yashish, the CEO, behaves? Oh, sorry, Yashish, the co-founder and chairman now of the board? Chairman of the board, because Arveer is CEO, behaves versus Yashish, the father?
No, they're exactly the same. Exactly the same. I promise you, they're exactly the same. So I deal with things exactly the same for both.
And what is that, if you were to kind of reduce it to
Yeah,
mental models of behavior?
I like people to understand the depth of things, the fundamental reason why they are doing stuff. Like today, we were doing a review and somebody was trying to explain to me, this is our profit. I said, I'm not even interested in that. I really want to understand why you're doing it. And yes, we will come to the metrics, but let's get the reason right first. And let's not be afraid of hard decisions. Let's not be afraid of anything. But let's do it all for the right reasons, and let's not be pretending to anybody else, right? So let's have no pretenses. Let's be real. Let's at core be fundamentally strong. I find it odd when people don't work to their potential, but I have found it in myself to live with it. Whether it was my sister, whether it was my mother, whether it was my wife, many times they leave a lot of potential on the table, and so do I find with a lot of my colleagues. They just leave a lot of potential on the table and don't work to potential. I've just come to, in life, everybody will not be the same. So I've got it. It pains me. It used to pain me a lot more. Now also it pains me, but I say, let's just keep the peace.
What do you tell people when it comes to thinking about their potential?
The potential is also when we talk about a company. You could be, you grow at a certain. So I'll put it this way: when you are doing well, is when you're actually not doing well, and when you're not doing well is actually when you're doing well. Because for most times, when we are under pressure and not doing great, we tend to push ourselves. So suppose in a month, our growth is 0. We would be working extra hard at trying to find that 2% of growth somehow. Suppose in a month, our growth is 70% or 80%. We'd be so happy about it that we just leave 5% here and there. That's the reality. And it's about bringing that reality to people. That I think Sanjeev is very good at it, because I remember all our board meetings with him. Whenever we were excited and happy, he would send us back subdued. And whenever we were sad and we were unhappy with our performance, he would set us back enthused. So, but yeah, that's what I get to. Like when I speak with Sarbir also, it's the same. Like I always tell him that, listen, the state you got the business in implies a certain level of growth and profitability anyway. So the 1,000 crore profit is almost a given. And he knocks me back. He says, yeah, it's a given for sure. But the point is that is true. It is what you do beyond that really is a differentiator. Because that additional amount just comes every quarter, month. All you have to do is grow 30%. Now, yeah, that's a challenge, but that's because of renewal growth and all that stuff. So I'm just talking financials for a moment. But there's certain things that are just set in stone. They're just motions happening, right? And getting excited about those things is no value. There's just NPV showing up, which was actually past revenue.
Exactly. My analogy would have been that if you're enjoying something today, it's probably because of the hard work that you put in the past. So what are you doing today to create something in the future?
And there's a lot we're doing, but it's very hard to point fingers at, look, this is, so the physical piece that we set up is all now. I think the biggest thing that we've done in the last 2 years is actually customer support. What we are hearing is we're now getting a windfall of consumers. Nothing's changed. There's no sudden market turn, right? Why is it happening? I'm almost feeling like it's that layer of goodwill that has been built, where our communication has been at the point of claim, we will help you. At the point of claim, we will help you. And that becoming real, which is entirely Sarbvir's credit. We did not have that before he joined. The whole physical channel being built out, where we are going and meeting customers to sell to them.
This is the roughly 1,000 people.
This is the roughly 1,000 people. That's entirely.
So what is this organization? This 1,000 people, what's their responsibility?
Sell. See, okay.
And also you said customer support.
Let me explain. If a customer comes to you for health or life, why does he come to you? I have done the talking to our guys and figuring out when they come to you. They mostly come when there's a life event that's happened. Either some friend or family has just died or been to hospital, big bill. They've seen the situation. Something has influenced them. Otherwise, it doesn't come to anybody's mind that Policybazaar was in the background telling them you should have health insurance. So when this event happens, they say, yeah, that guy was saying something. So let me go to Policybazaar. That's precisely why we have a huge amount of direct traffic. Then his questions comes, and I'm spending 20,000 rupees. Will these guys actually pay the claim or not?
But it's not.
It doesn't matter whether it's 20,000,
claim, right? It's the insurance company.
No. That's a very important thing. Many times you will believe, yes, it's the insurance company. But, and this is something that is not very well understood all over the world. But actually, the client is also the first line of defense against lack of payment of claims. The distributor, because he's the interface. So he first of all, he has no interest in not paying the claim because he would like his client to get paid. Plus, he has knowledge about the industry, so he can navigate better. He or she can has relationships with the insurer. And if you have a profitable pool of business with the insurer, your ability to have a fair conversation and get the claim paid is extremely high. We have seen a lot of proof where a claim is denied, but is eventually paid when we intervene. It's very, very large numbers. I'm not talking anecdotally about one case. Systematically, that's the case. And almost 10 to 15% higher claim settlement because of that, which is pretty much the gap. Like the gap is about 10 to 15%, right? So I can hand on heart say we would fight the corner for a consumer like crazy where we knew there was a genuine claim. Equally, when we also look at our own data and try to figure out, even post facto, if the customer was in any way misquoting, misguiding, and we find lots and lots of stuff. And we report that to the insurance company almost instantaneously. So if you are an honest customer who's declaring fairly with us, you can pretty much rest assured that we will make sure that the insurance company and our partner is fair to you at the point of claim. If you've been dishonest in purchasing the policy, you should be very worried if you bought through us.
So what you're doing is trying to incentivize both sides of your platform, better customers and better insurers and partners.
Absolutely. And playing an active role in the middle in dispute resolution effectively. Both with information capture. We're running programs that have not been done anywhere in the world here. You're running programs like Bima Samadhan. You know what that program is? We go on live television or something, insurance company, us and 20 customers whose claims have been rejected. They come on the platform and they talk to each other. And in that, 60% of claims get settled on the spot. Right? We have programs at the website, in the company where, see, when will a customer come to us? Only when the claim is rejected. Otherwise, why will a customer come to us? Right? If the claim is happening smoothly, why does he need to come to us? Right? And it's at that point that you come in. That's when the customer needs your help the most.
In some of your early interviews, you've talked about curiosity and confusion being very important. I think you were asked about confidence and clarity. And I think you added and say it's very important to be curious, and that certain amount of confusion that you had about your identity, which got clarified over a period of. Why is curiosity so important for you?
Curiosity is a necessity for first principles thinking. Otherwise, you will always be looking at so-and-so did this, so I should do this. See, there are two ways.
Pattern matching without understanding.
Without understanding in depth. So I just don't do that. I will not follow. Usually, I would not just follow unless I have a lot of clarity in my mind. And when I do that, I'll do that openly. Like, I'll give you an example. We're running the corporate business. I don't have the ability to be dishonest.
Corporate business implying you selling to companies.
So when people ask me, what's your plan for this business? I tell them very clearly, we are learning. We don't know. We think there's a very big market. We think there's a scope for technology. We think there's a scope for a good distributor. We think there is something here, but we do not know. For a public company CEO to be saying, I do not know, is a very big thing. And it's been 1.5 years that we've been running that business. And I'm still saying that. But the most important thing is my employees who are looking for clarity, career clarity, I'm saying the same thing to them also. Right? So there is confusion. When there's confusion, you have to accept it. That yes, there is confusion. We're not sure. But there's no harm carrying on in that situation. But you need to know. Because when you're driving a car, when you don't know where you are, you drive slowly, you drive cautiously. You don't drive at full throttle in that situation. Right? And I think that is where genuine honesty becomes a very big trait. So I have some of the senior management telling me that, why don't you just say you're committed to this business? Because even today, when I'm talking to you, some of them will come back to me and say, yeah, what are you? You went on media and said you're not committed to the business. I said, I cannot say something I don't believe in. Right? And I said, that is my strength, that's my weakness. We are, let's say, honest to a fault. But that's also our strength. If I say something to you, the thing I hate the most is when people are, let's say, guessing whether you're speaking the truth or not. And to me, that's the worst thing a person can do to me as a human being, because that is something I hate the most.
I mean, that aligns with Policybazaar and its job of trying to detect who's telling the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, so as a leader, do you have any tips on how you identify and groom potential leaders? You spoke about future potential.
Same thing here. I like to see truthfulness. I like to see. So the one trait that we classify in Policybazaar is an iota of selflessness. And both those words are very carefully used. We don't expect you to be selfless all the time. You have to be selfish to survive also and to succeed. And I want people to be smart and selfish also. But at times, you shouldn't be a person who doesn't have the ability to be selfless. And I just don't have the ability at all. I can only think myself. There's some people who will create a 100 rupee loss for the company for 1 rupee of their own benefit. No, that is something we cannot have. And I know it sounds weird, but that happens all the time in the corporate world, right? And in any part of the world, right? So we spot that iota of selflessness somehow. And over a lifetime, you start developing a pattern of matching on that. When people come into the organization who don't match that profile, very quickly that gets, like, they stand out like a sore thumb in the organization. And the organization is very harsh on them, very, very rapidly.
It's almost
It
like a
doesn't-
body turning on a foreign agent. That
Yeah,
invades
it's
the world.
almost like HR doesn't need to get involved. Those people know they are outsiders here, and it gets caught up in everything. And we are extremely transparent as an organization, so people almost start calling it out. And we have, and these are seen in small things, like we don't have anything like what time you come into office, what time you don't. But on a day that there's a problem, and on the day when you also have a personal commitment, let's say, and depends, right? If your kid is unwell, that's a different issue. But if you're going to see a football match and you've bought a ticket for 50,000 rupees, let's just say, are you able to walk off from that ticket because you have something serious that you need to solve, right? We look for those kind of things. And we find them. And honestly, the 50,000 rupees doesn't matter in the long term. So we basically look for silly decision making that sometimes people do. And if you're a silly decision maker, you won't last at Policybazaar. It's very simple.
Culture is obviously very important for you. How have you, as a founder,
I like
try to build and evolve your
culture?
culture?
I like to explain to people that the biggest traits for success at Policybazaar long term are going to be patience and trust. Either you trust us or you don't trust us. If you trust us, be patient. At times, it may appear we're not being fair to you. But you show me cases where we have not been fair to people for, let's say, 5 years, 7 years. Show me cases. Look around the organization. See people. See how they have done. And see if we have been unfair to people over a medium to long-term period. Sometimes, in the short term, life is never going to be 100% fair. We may not be able to identify everybody. We may not be able to be fair to everyone in the short term. That's why I say, before 5 years, we consider you a new joinee. Before 5 years are over. So, be patient.
What is your average retention? Because in the world that we live in today, it's very rare for people to say, I will work for 5 years in an organization.
So medium to senior management, 5 years, we consider a new joinee. So Sarbvir's now been about 3 years. He's new in the system. Just like, obviously, he's gotten involved very rapidly, but that's the thinking. So many people will stand up and say, yeah, I'm new to the company. And that's up to about 5 years. So I'm just giving you the number. The number for us, the cutoff point is about 5 years. We have more than 100 people who are 10 years old. Please appreciate, in the entire management team at that time, there may have been 150 people 10 years ago. Like, I'm talking about 2013. So maybe 200 people. So of them, at least half of them are still here. And we take great pride that those 100 do well. And the fact that others who are patient eventually do well.
Still sticking to culture, I'm trying to distill Policybazaar's success longevity down to elements of its culture. You talked about honesty to a fault. You talked about iota of selflessness. And now you talked about patience and trust. Is there any other value which is very key?
We work with urgency. So see, while we are patient,
I was just about to say
at the
that,
same
right?
time, we work with urgency. So work with urgency, work with purpose,
So how does an employee reconcile patience and urgency at the same, like?
Yeah. So there we are being a bit selfish as a company. We're saying, be urgent with your work, be patient for the rewards. and maybe we're being selfish, right? But in a way, we know our truth. We're also being honest and telling you upfront that there is no way that. So I'll give you an example, right? One guy, pretty much after the IPO, came here and said, what's in it for me for the future? I said, why? He says, I can get 1 crore outside. Out here, my compensation is 65 lakhs. Doesn't add up. I said, how much have you made in the last 7 years that you've been here? So he said, I've made about 20 crore rupees. I said, could you have made that? Like, you could have, but in general, were you expecting to make that when you joined here? He said, no. But he said, but that's done. So I said, what makes you think that my colors will suddenly change? or our colors will suddenly change, that we will stop all mechs for you to make money. He basically, he's a nice guy, but he didn't have trust and he didn't have patience. So he moved on, gone and joined a corporate. I can promise you 5 years from now, he'll repent that decision. And I'm not being harsh to him or bad to him. It's just, I just feel bad. I'm not saying he could have continued here forever, but all I'm saying is, according to me, it was a terrible decision, which I feel bad about. Bad about not because it hurt the company in any way, but because it's going to end up hurting him. Because life is long, and there's another 15 years of fun ahead, and of course we will grow, and we will grow in value, and employees will make lots again when they add value. But it'll be when they add value. It can't be without adding value, right? And that's where the new ESOP thing that we are going to plan is going to be, market price linked and all that stuff. So that from here onwards, as you add value, you derive a lot of, there's no problem. Nobody's saying that if the company value, just saying over the next 5 years, let's say triples, nobody's saying management can't have 10% of it, of the growth. Nobody's saying that. But the point is, it can't be that the value would not grow and management would take 10%. That also can't be. That's also stupidity, right? So I think as long as somebody's willing to have an honest conversation and align, we are happy to create. But sometimes people don't have the patience because they say, it didn't happen today. Those people usually tend to be their own enemies.
What is it that you feel you add most value to Policybazaar?
I think this piece that we spoke about, but by the way, I do work quite a bit. So there's a lot of operational stuff I do. Which
No, I mean, of course, I meant...
But real value is this, keeping the company honest, straightforward. See, I'll put it very simply here. What did I feel bad about after IPO for the first 6 months? Because people were basically second guessing us, saying what they are saying is not true. Okay, that to me is the worst state I can be in. Right. So I think what do you want? What's the difference between public company and private company? In a public company, private company, investors have a lot of interaction with the company. In a public company, you broadly need to trust, right? Nobody needs to second guess us. That's the biggest thing. In a way, like nobody needs to second guess InfoEdge. Right? There are companies which you always need to second guess. Because you don't need to second guess. That's the most important thing. And till I'm there, that will stay the thing. You will never need to second guess the company. And a lot of fundamental reasons why companies get destroyed, culture, etc., will not happen because I will become uncomfortable with that situation much faster than the company can be allowed to become uncomfortable with it. So hard decisions, etc., will all get taken whenever they are necessary. I think that's the value I bring. And that's very important because eventually we have to survive 20 years. Baki to company banti rahegi yaar. And we have very, very good team. I'm not the only guy who's building the company. Neither am I the only guy with the equity in the company. So we have hundreds of people with equity and alignment in the company. And I think it's the hard work of everybody and the alignment of everybody that will deliver it. But after my role is that.
How do you learn new things today?
I'm actually not very good at learning new things. I don't really go out seeking new things. And many people don't see that because they see me doing a variety of things. But I've been a runner since I was 8 years old. It's not a new thing that I've picked up.
Okay. How do you teach and mentor people within the organization then?
See, people in the organization come up with lots of ideas, lots of thought processes, and it's about our framework and aligning people on that framework. That how will we evaluate? How will we look at things? How will we build businesses? What's our ethos? Those are the things that we really focus on. Then eventually watching the numbers also. It can't be just strategy. See, having a good strategy is okay, but every once in a while you need to see the numbers also. So then holding people honest to the numbers, bring them. That's basically senior management's role. Yeah. What else does senior management do? And culturally making sure things are not going off, people's interests are not misaligned, etc., etc. Those are the things that you spend time on.
I'm sure you've interviewed hundreds, possibly thousands of people from the time that you started Policybazaar.
Not really, but okay.
Let's say dozens or possibly at least 100. Like, what do you have? Great open-ended questions that you ask people?
No.
What are your conversations typically
See, I
like?
don't treat any relationship differently. I had an arranged marriage. Before I went to see my wife, I had already decided I'm getting married. Before seeing her, right? It was the same. I probably got rejected by 5-6 girls, but I did not reject anyone. Okay, that's not my philosophy. I would almost not meet.
Is that the reason why you said that you haven't done so many interviews?
Yeah.
So you don't do interviews.
I don't do too many interviews.
Because you don't say no.
I don't say no very well, and not just that. I like to think about it. Right? Who are the senior people we've hired? They are almost all people whom I have known for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. We are not people who, we don't have, for at least the people I hire, almost nobody is without relationship. Now that's both a weakness and a strength. You can say we are not open-minded to looking at hundreds of people, right? We've never had a headhunter. We've never had, anything of that sort. Yeah, that is a weakness also. That's a strength also. So, for example, when Sarbir came in, it's not like we had a headhunting firm looking for a CEO, and then we had 20 candidates, and then we narrowed down to 3, and then we said, okay, these 3 are the ones that our board will interview. And basically, the coffee with Sarbir, and me requesting him, would you consider joining us?
2 of you went to IIT Delhi together.
He was my senior by 2 years, somebody I respect a lot then and now. And even today we have difficulty because in a way he's my senior. And in a way I am his senior. But we don't behave that way. But point is, yes, we do have...
Those dynamics exist.
Those dynamics exist, right? But there were very specific reasons because I respected him quite a bit. But it was almost a tentative conversation where I didn't even know whether he would consider it. And he also said, look, if somebody else would have said it, I may not have even thought about it because I'm doing my thing. But because it's you, give me a weekend. He came back after the weekend and said yes. By now, we had not discussed salary. We had not discussed compensation. By the way, we never discussed it.
What was the trigger for it, for you to reach out to him or to bring on board a CEO?
We were going public in a few years. I also wanted to distance myself a bit from the organization because please understand, I'm the founder. And as a founder, having worked 13, 14 years with the same team, you develop a certain amount of affection, which you cannot always act on rationally. So while you have a very good team, you know that, look, however honest you are, you're leaving some gaps because of proximity, because of very deep relations. So I wanted somebody to come in the middle. And only somebody whom I could trust so much that it's almost like, an
extension.
You have kids. I call it, that's how I explained to Sarbir also. I don't know if you've seen that movie, the English movie, The Mom, where this woman is sort of developing cancer. And so she needs another lady whom her husband is seeing to come in and manage her children. And how that woman has to develop a relationship with the children while this person is sort of dying in a way, right? And it's a very, very difficult relationship. So the company and the people are like my kids, but I also know that I could be harming them by being too close to them. And so they need somebody who's probably not as close and who can be a lot more rational and open-minded and also bring in new people. Because also our organization was not very good at bringing in new people. We were getting stuck because I had hired a few new people and at a senior level, they would get pushed off because the mafia was too strong, if I would use the wrong word, right? But so it was important to bring in somebody who was not part of that. And he's a fantastic guy. I also think he's much smarter than I am, etc., etc. Although over time I realized there are a few areas where I can be quite good also. So I approached him from that perspective. He joined, and I think everything has moved in the direction that I thought it would. in the sense because the team took to him very quickly. He's brought in a lot of fresh talent. So I'll give you an example, right? We had a very good, obviously I say that about myself. Let's say level 1, level 2 and level 2.5 were very good. But we were struggling to develop level 3 and level 4. I think Sarbir coming in because people were not moving in that direction. He's been able to build level 3 and level 4. He's been able to question. I had a massive aversion to physical meetings because I thought too much wrong can be communicated, etc., in them. He tried those things, right? I come with a very strong bias for what's going to work and what's not going to work. He doesn't. He's happy to try out a lot of things. So if you think about, physical or corporate business or, the claim support, a lot of things he's tried. He's extremely disciplined. So the way I see it is I was more like a Brazilian football team. He's more like the German football team. Very organized, very structured, will succeed at everything. Maybe a little less passionate about the cause. Credit where it's due. I think I'm very, very passionate about the reason why we exist.
By virtue of being a founder as well.
Yeah, perhaps. I think also as a person, he doesn't get very passionate about anything. He's a little more professional than
German team.
Yeah, German team. I think German team, is not the team people cry about.
You said you're also involved operationally, and
there are lots of reasons where Sarabir, because I've been around for so long, and there are very deep relationships all over. There's a deep understanding of. So when me and Sarabir speak, we say, okay, when it's a 1-year thing, it's almost all Sarabir. When it's a 5-year matter, it's almost all me. But then we both dabble in each other's areas. So yeah, there is a regulatory side where we've evolved with regulation over the last 15 years. So there was at least, although his understanding now is becoming almost better than mine. But there is obviously a pretty deep understanding of how that part of the world works. And it's just that. But increasingly, those are becoming less and less. And increasingly, his is becoming much more.
You said you're a huge fan of first principles. This podcast is literally called First Principles. What are some of your favorite first principles or mental models when you're faced with big, significant decisions that aren't easy to make?
The thing about first principles is there are no models. There is you start off. You start with whatever the information is in front of you. What is your right to win? What are the things that will make you win in a particular activity? Do you have the ability to let me talk about Policybazaar. The moment we got to health insurance, very rapidly, I came up with 2 things. This requires deep communication to the customer because the customer is not going to buy easily. This is not a simple product, it's a low trust product. So it will require a lot of customer support in a way. The most critical element in this is risk. So high disclosure is very, very important. This is something we understood back then. 2009, I remember my first meeting with Apollo, Munich. A
company which does not exist today with the same name.
Yeah, which became HDFC Ergo, but was the second largest health insurer in the country till it got sold. I remember my meeting with the chief, and he said, "Why should we work with you?" I said, "We would be able to get you better disclosure." He said, his view was we would not get better disclosure. So I had filled up a form the day before, and I showed him the form that had been filled by the agent, and it said my weight was 72 kgs, while it was actually 96. When Policybazaar started, my weight was 96 kgs. So I showed him that form. I said, does my weight look like, if you ask me my weight, will I ever say 72? And so I said, there is almost no disclosure. The disclosure is just to make sure I don't go through a medical, right? But this thinking of lack of disclosure in the physical channel was very deep back then. And what was the fundamental truth here? The fundamental truth is if there are recorded conversations, they will almost always be better at disclosure than unrecorded conversations. And that was my aversion to physical meetings, if you really think about it. And why do you not want to have physical meetings? I still remember the conversation where we said we should have physical sales. And the guy asked me, why don't you have it? And I said, the guy does not carry a video recorder with him. And so it's an opaque conversation which I know nothing about. So why should we do it? Right? So I think lots of such principles on which you basically go and hang your hat. You said these are so true that, then after that, it just takes energy and execution.
So you spoke about right to win. Tell me a bit more about that. What is right to win?
If you are going to be better than, I don't want to use the word best, but I don't know why I should not use the word. But let me just say, if you're going to be better than average at your quality of business, and your quality of business, see, what are the two biggest issues in insurance? Customer did not understand what he was sold. Insurance company did not understand the risk they took on. Those are two biggest issues. If you are better than half the industry or the average of the industry in that, that's your right to win. And if you are fundamentally better than them, fundamentally, and even if they wish they cannot be better, then you have a right to win. It is really that simple, right? That even if, because, as they call it, my mother used to call it Sanjay ki kheer. It's not one person who's making the problem, right? So everybody will say, why should I be the Bhagat Singh? And suddenly start doing honest business. Because that won't change the industry, right? So in that kind of situation, if you are the one who has the longevity of thought, because of fundamental reason, because it's a brand, you're not a person who can disappear, right? That's your weakness also. You have to understand your weakness also. What is the weakness here? You cannot do anything wrong. See, an agent can, although it is said that it is not allowed, but cashback happens in the market. I can't do it. I'm not allowed to.
Cashback being...
If you're buying a policy, I can't give you 500 rupees back. While if you buy it offline, that does happen. The reality is it does happen. Lots of advantages the physical channel has, right? Which the digital channel does not have. So digital channel has to understand its strength. Its strength is not in doing cashbacks, because at scale, if I start doing cashbacks, it'll be reported to the regulator in 2 days and my license will be cancelled. Right? So being under that stringent regulation, being under that eye of the, also has its strength. What is that strength? The strength is you're having to be honest. And you're having to keep records. You're having to display records. A customer can come and ask me 7 years later, 10 years later, 12 years later, that give me the records of my sale. It was a requirement. And having a physical transcript of it has been a requirement since we started. So all of that is a huge advantage, and we have to make that our right to win. That's become the right to win. And the second reason for right to win is, if you are the one who's educating the whole market on this stuff, then many of those people, when the event happens, because it's not a pleasure purchase. So it's not like, come buy an ice cream right now, you'll feel very good. Come buy this pair of jeans and you'll look very good in it. This is, buy this thing in the next 20 years. If shit happens to you, then you won't have as bad an impact as you could have had. Who wants to do that? It's tough. And the only time you'll do it is when you see stuff happening to somebody, right? So that's and you have to understand this basic. And so in that, if you're the one who's educating everybody about it, you're not getting an instant gratification. Nobody's coming to you immediately to buy. But the point is, when that event happens, they'll come to you. And thus you will start building direct traffic, which is the only way to have a profitable business. So both of those become your right to win. Your direct traffic and your better disclosures. And oddly enough, we luckily managed to get a good call center operation as well, which helps you convert more, and that becomes your third right to win, if you would.
Just the last couple of questions. What are the 2 or 3 most common adjectives people in Policybazaar might use to describe you?
And the same that I describe for myself. So I think they would say honest to a fault, very passionate. I think those two would be there. There's a thing here which my daughter, when she was about 4 years old, drew for me. And that has all the adjectives.
I can see intelligent,
those are okay.
On time, swimmer, sporty, receiving, deceiving.
She's written that then, because there must be some chocolate or something she may not have got. But she's an intelligent girl. So, but if you think about, not very different, yeah. She's written untidy, intelligent, independent, on time, determined, You see a lot of mathematics in there, sporty. Yeah. She's used word like important, which she did not write. So the I is starting with a small one. Straightforward. Just see how many times straightforward, kind, those kind of words appear. It's a pretty good reflection of what she's written. So these stay. I must share this with you. So these have stayed in this company pretty much from when the company started.
I can imagine, because you said that she
was 4 years old. She's 19 now,
and
she was 4 years old. Yeah. And these have always stayed in my room. And nobody's ever rubbed them out. So, and a lot of people use this room. So anybody can just rub these out also, right? But it is not written that you don't need to rub it out. So that is a deep part. So what I have given up for setting up Policybazaar is actually family. And I think a lot of people understand that. They don't say it, but a lot of people here actually understand that. That this guy actually stayed away from family for 13, 14 years.
So that was my next question. How would you rate yourself? How would you rate your performance as a founder, CEO, and as a parent?
So as a founder, CEO, I think we've done quite well. And
I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself?
On a founder, CEO, I would say probably, I would actually say 8 on 10. I probably could have raised funds at higher valuations in the past. And whether I should have or not, I don't know. But I do believe I underplay our organization a bit. And so many founders do that much better than me. I don't need to be that much better, but I need to be a little better than I am.
And as a parent?
As a parent, it's a very difficult one because the kids have turned out well. But I think a lot of the credit of that will eventually go to my wife, who's actually been there with them, right? And at least my son says so. So I'll tell you, my daughter says I'm a better parent. My son says I'm not there when I'm required. So and my mother's always, he always says that mommy's always been there. So yeah, there is and he does send me on a guilt trip once in a while on that. So there is that aspect, but I always tried to be connected to them, and I think we are very connected. The fact that we all run, cycle, and swim is testament to that. But yeah, I wasn't there to drop them to school all the time or pick them up and all those things. And Shikha had to be the only parent, and she had to also work, because please appreciate, in the first 6 months when Policybazaar was set up, I was on dole. We didn't have money. So this is not a rich person who set up a company. We didn't have anything. So Shikha she had 2 kids, and she was a single parent, and she had to return to working. She's an INSEAD graduate, but she was not working before that. She had to start working at a bank. So I think she's had a very, very tough life. And I think clearly she's been the parent, and but yeah, that's how it is. But I think I give them very good. I give them very good advice while being kind. So yeah, I think I've been a decent parent as well, but I've not been there all the time.
It's interesting that you use the word kind, because it's not a word which is used very commonly in modern professional life. Kind or kindness. So it's actually quite refreshing, because my son pointed out to me one day when we were talking about some teacher, and he said that this teacher is very kind. And I'm like, it's not an adjective that you hear a lot in professional settings. We don't describe people as kind.
So one of the sentences I use very, very often in Policybazaar, very, very often, whenever we're making any decision, is kind is better than right. It's a thing I use all the time. So anytime I get, let's say, an employee mail or a customer mail or anything, and I respond to it internally, almost always I say, and remember, kind is better than right. Because in a decision, you can sometimes be too right and too unkind. Yeah, obviously there's a balance. There's a balance between the two.
Kind is better than right is a lovely thought to end the interview with. Thank you so much, Yashish.
Thank you.